The story begins 12 years after that tower was completely built. People idolized the hunters, and at the same time, hunters enjoyed their fame and fortune as if they were celebrities. Nevertheless, the state wouldn't ignore the enormous power the hunters had, and that led to an era where a nation's power were measured by how many hunters they had. As a consequence, to be able to protect themselves from that and to raise their value, Hunter created an association with guilds, and they started to operate in groups. Their popularity was so high that they created a TV show called We Are the Hunters, which was created to raise public interest in them. They managed to amass such a big audience that became one of the most successful TV shows. This TV show invited the main leader from each guild in South Korea, the Goguryeo Guild's leader Seokwan Han, the Aring Guild's leader Soyeon Lee, and Seoul Guild's leader Hyunwoo Kim to ask them some questions about rank S hunters to avoid mistakes with rookie hunters. After some questions asked, the host asks the most voted question by the public, and that was rumor has it about the existence of an advanced player that lives within the tutorial tower. The three guild leaders ask themselves in surprise, who is that advanced player? The host says that she also here found some rumors on the internet about that man, and she asks the guild's leaders if they know anything about that person. The Goguryeo Guild's leader says that according to what is said about that advanced player, it seems that he is still alive. Aring Guild's leader says that she doubts about the existence of somebody she never heard of, since the tower must have abducted him along with them, and she says that he should be a first-generation hunter. Everybody got surprised since he was a first-generation hunter, so he must have been in that tower for 12 years. With that, Seoul Guild's leader says that it might be a matter of a curse, since after completing the maze, the tower must have sent him to the first floor again instead of freeing him like the other, leading them to a theory that the advanced player is a hunter trapped which couldn't get out of the tower. So they finally got to the conclusion that according to what they already knew about the tutorial tower, that where hunters go to train their basic abilities. So if someone completed the tower over and over during 12 years, then could become an extremely powerful hunter. It is said that one member of some guild who just completed the tower saw the advanced player completing the tower in just one day, meaning that this hunter have surpassed the average hunters a long time ago. And of course, that was just making an hypothetical theory about that player and if he really beat the tower 12 years ago. And here is where our protagonist appears. Hyunwoo Kim. Inside the advanced tower appears someone that makes the other hunters want to get out the tutorial tower, while they shout that this was not a tutorial, but a death sentence while they are thrown in the air. Hyunwoo is calmed and easy and decided to go to the place everyone is running from. And it turns out that it was about the final boss from the last floor. The final test. Hyunwoo stands before the boss while it roars to him. Hyunwoo exclaims to his boss that if he could get out of the tower he would be rank or S and smiles without worrying. Meanwhile, a rank B hunter guy from the Soyeon says that how could be possible that someone that just came out of the tower could match his rank or S leader. This guy had crossed with the advanced player 2 years ago and saw him complete the dungeon and said that it was like watching a legend in action. Some hunters affirmed how incredible that player was. One hunter told that 3 werewolves appeared in the 72nd floor and he killed them alone. Another hunter said that he was the exact definition of an advanced player since he went from the 1st floor to the 10th with a flying kick, making us understand that this advanced player's power was abysmal. Going back to the battle between Hyunwoo and the last floor's boss. Hyunwoo kicks the boss, making it kneel. Even the boss itself trembles when realizing how powerful this hunter is. Hyunwoo, proud and cocky, asks who is in charge of the tower, saying how good he was and how perfect he might become. Hyunwoo finishes the 11th floor boss with a kick in just 3 seconds. Then bored, he says that there are no new things to try. Over the years, hunter apprentices took less time to complete the tower, and although there are tutorial towers all around the world, it is stated that they are all the same on the inside. So anytime a new hunter group clears the tower, more information is gathered and passed to the others, since this information is shared all over the world. Then new hunters appears, breaking world records, beating the tower faster than the rest. Most of the countries make that information public to increase its population survival and also to get more powerful hunters. However, it doesn't matter how precise the information about the tower is. Only a few manage to conquer the tutorial tower, since every hunter that work their way up to the 99th floor, they must face nothing less than Baltog, the fearsome boss from last floor. According to the registry, 75 of every 95 hunters doesn't survive the final boss. Baltog takes more than a half of the apprentices that arrives to his floor, finishing with them easily. Between all this desperation, Hyunwoo appears, saying that he has beaten the boss 1349 times. Once he defeats the boss, a portal appears. When Hyunwoo's trophy realizes that he came back to the 1st floor again, saying that this was the 1350th time that he sees that sign. Hyunwoo smiles and shouts, "Let me go home." He lies on the floor and opens a state window checking his abilities and realizes that for clearing the tower so many times he doesn't get any more stats. In that moment Hyunwoo starts remembering how things were 12 years back and he got nostalgic because he remembered his friends fighting with him to clear the tower. Everybody celebrating for clearing the last floor, knowing that they finally could get out and go to their homes, and thanking him because if it weren't for him, they wouldn't be able to clear the tower. They also said to him not to forget them, and he responded saying that now they know each other very well so he wouldn't forget them, and they promised to make a reunion once they were outside. Once they got through the portal, Hyunwoo sees the sign "Welcome to the Tutorial Tower," and a bit confused he realizes that he is in the first floor once again. So he decides to clear the tower again with a new group. And at the end, a sign appears again. The curse sign that says that he is the tutorial player and he was the bearer of the tower curse. He doesn't understand the situation and get desperate. That desperation lasts for long and Hyunwoo is furious, so that's when he decides to try different ways to get free from that curse and to get out from that tower. And those ways were completing the tower alone, completing the tower 10 times, training until his abilities reached the max, but nothing worked. He tried so many ways to get out for 5 years but he couldn't. And that's when he stopped trying and he accepted his destiny, trying to enjoy the situation. The 433rd time Hyunwoo performed as an NPC guide for beginners. The 512th time he performed as a military builder in charge of the recruits. However, role-playing games and interactions didn't last long. Hyunwoo couldn't stand the stories about the outside world that others who went to the tower used to tell him. And since he had anything else to do but to clear the tower over and over, we come back to the present. And being 12 years locked in the tower with no chance of getting out, he got frustrated, saying that nothing ever changes. When suddenly a sign appears saying that the infinite game was eliminated. Hyunwoo gets surprised and asks what was happening. He reads the sign that says that the infinite game was eliminated. After completing the next tower, you can leave. Good news for Hyunwoo. With a big smile in his face, he shouts that he finally will get out of there. And jumping with all of his strength, he only says, "At last I can finally go home." Going back to the TV show We Are the Hunters, they are saying that in general basis, the minimum time to complete the tower is 10 months. And the host asked the guild leaders if they believe that Generation 18 of hunters could break that record. They say that it is pretty difficult to answer that since the amount of hunters changes with each round and it is very important how much they can collaborate with each other. Hyunwoo says that individual abilities are important as well, and Seokwon says that the biggest challenge is trying to clear the 51st floor, since there is a high level boss that appears every 10 floors, and from that floor you can rely on luck. And just when they were talking, Hyunwoo appears, desperate to get out since he thinks that is taking him an eternity to clear the tower even though he was advancing fast, since he is going up floor after floor beating everything that was in front of him. Hyunwoo reaches the 99th floor and the final boss appears, and furiously he shouts, "I'm going home," while defeating the boss with one hit. The ones watching the tower are surprised seeing that a portal gets opened, and they say that it was a new record. And one of them says to the other to prepare himself to check the survivor list. But from that portal only one person would get out, of course. Nothing less than Hyunwoo, who raises his head to see the sky and he smiles after those long 12 years. Suddenly one of the guys gets near to him congratulating him since he completed the tutorial tower, and saying that it must have been pretty hard. Hyunwoo asks if it was true that he was outside the tower, and he answers that he isn't even listening. He says that indeed he was out of the tower and asks for Hyunwoo's name. He happily shouts his name and that he was free. The guy gets towards him checking the rookies list and realized that Hyunwoo wasn't there. And when flipping the page he notices that Hyunwoo's name was the first one in the list of the first generation of tutorial tower. And amazed he sees that Hyunwoo is the most advanced player. After 12 years since his abduction, it is confirmed that Hyunwoo Kim have came out of the tutorial tower. 1 week later, the Korean tutorial center gets filled with people, since Generation 18 of hunters will take their first grade test. They say that this time is very special because they have a record of 2 weeks faster from the last one and the whole world is watching. Another subject that is in everyone's mouth is that the most advanced player is there with them. We can see the 3 guild leaders inside the tutorial center VIP waiting room, talking about how last Hyunwoo got out. The guild leader says that if they arranged a reunion he would be the only one who would look the same, since there is no need to eat or sleep inside the tower, and the body doesn't age. Seokwon enthusiastically says that after 12 years, what kind of beast Hyunwoo could have become. Meanwhile, the exam for the 18th generation is about to begin. The hunters grab their weapons in the waiting room and they prepared to try and beat the new record. Behind them and unnoticed there was Hyunwoo eating a delicious fries. Everybody amazed turned to see him. Hyunwoo asks why are they carrying that equipment, and they answer that those were given to them that morning and that if they never gave those equipment to him, they emphasize that if they screw up in the exam, it would be pretty difficult to progress. Without paying much attention, Hyunwoo asked to himself if he slept when they were about to give him his equipment. Suddenly, an announcement from the tutorial center is heard. requesting that all apprentices to get out the waiting room and to go to the exam site. Hyunwoo asks to himself what could that be. On their way, this guy called David appears, welcoming all the apprentices and giving them their grades. David tells them not to worry that much, since compared to the tutorial tower, this is just an application test. But while David was chatting with the apprentices, Hyunwoo yawns bored. David proceeds to prepare the first exam. Once he presses that button, the door behind will open. Once the door opened completely, they realize that it was about a maze. David says that this maze is filled with obstacles and recommend to all apprentices to use their abilities completely. The 30 seconds countdown starts, and from now on the apprentices are anxious to start the exam. David says that those apprentices were disciplined and starts boasting about when he took his exam for the first time. And while he was thinking about that, Hyunwoo asks him if it doesn't matter how they reached the exit. Surprised, David watches him from head to toes, asking to himself if Hyunwoo was one of the apprentices and if he wasn't taking it seriously since he didn't have his equipment. David asks him that in fact it doesn't matter how they reached the exit, and also ask him if he thought that the exam was a joke. And Hyunwoo, being arrogant, tell him to save his speech to those breaking their backs. David classifies him as an arrogant boy, and Hyunwoo proposes a bet. If he manages to clear the maze in less than 20 seconds, he would have to give him 10 million wons. David was furious, so he asked him if he was afraid. He accepts Hyunwoo's the bet, and then Hyunwoo goes through the maze door and presses the rock while thinking about the 10 million wons and also thinking about the hunter's salary. And he thinks that being a hunter gives you a lot of money while trying to push the wall. When doing that, David and the guild leaders asks why is he doing that. Hyunwoo uses an ability called Charge, and he gain access thought the maze with his punch. Once crossed the whole maze, Hyunwoo says that he already is at the end of it even though he opened his own exit. The audience couldn't believe that was possible, and one of the guild leaders stated that he always was very imprudent. Hyunwoo was very happy about those 10 millions, and he realizes the damage he did and wonders if they would charge him for the damage done. 24 hours before the hunter tests in Hunter Everything magazine, a guy asks his secretary called Junseong to fetch him the beginner's list of everyone participating in the exam, and asks her if she wasn't excited about it since the most advanced player is included. She wondered if there wasn't another beginner player worth it that wasn't the advanced player. She answers yes and says that this guy who was an expert had knowledge in martial arts and would be a good candidate. The player was Kang Hyunwoo Lee. He wanted to be a star. He had talent, the ability and luck on his side. Wee was the one defeating monster the most inside the tower and was the strongest hunter of his team. His plan was to pass every obstacle and stand out since the beginning. That was the plan. Until Hyunwoo appeared, and Kang Hyunwoo thought that he was stealing his show. Okay, so going to the present where the grade test is taking place. Hyunwoo broke the maze and the test was suspended temporarily, without letting the others take their opportunity to pass the test that day. Everybody were surprised in the press room for what was happening. Not even the cameras could get anything since all was happened so fast, and they only have footage of Hyunwoo since they didn't thought that somebody in sandals was an interesting person. This is where a star is born. Now in the waiting room, the apprentice Kang Hyunwoo is uneasy while Hyunwoo is taking a nap. Everybody in the room talks about how impressive was the way Hyunwoo went through the maze. Kang Hyunwoo thinks that it wasn't over yet and he could take a bit of that spotlight. Suddenly, an announcement from the evaluation council arrives, telling the beginners that the exam would take up to 15 minutes. Kang Hyunwoo thinks that it doesn't matter that he was the most advanced player, since it wouldn't be up to him and he trusts in his own abilities and experience. Now the evaluation event would be a wave of monsters where you can use virtual tricks, created monsters from spirit stones and cutting-edge technology. With this tests, the apprentices are evaluated on how long it takes to them to defeat the monsters. Kang Hyunwoo is demolishing this tests and he throws a beam. Everyone is surprised because they just came out of the tower and he already have magic powers, so they thought they were before a genius. Kang Hyunwoo throws multiple attacks to defeat as many monsters as he can. The time is up and Kang Hyunwoo, hunter number 33, has eliminated 78 monsters in total, the higher score by an apprentice to date. Everyone says that it was incredible and up to this point he is the best candidate. But not everything was bright, because if it wasn't for Hyunwoo he would have been in first place. But now it was Hyunwoo's turn to take the test, but he says that he has no energy for that. Yes, nobody would believe that Kang Hyunwoo was intrigued. Now they announce that the most advanced player is next, just after the genius guy, and all the guild's leaders are anxious to see how his fighting skills have evolved. Hyunwoo is inside the room and has 2 minutes to finish with as many monsters as possible. Monsters start to appear and they say that the exam will begin in 10 seconds. The countdown, while Hyunwoo is very calmed, the exam begins. Hyunwoo launches an attack that not even the cameras manages to catch. He attacks here and there. Hyunwoo is so fast that it seems like he is appearing and disappearing and looks like the monsters' heads are exploding everywhere. Spectators are asking if he is also using magic. One of the guild leaders says that that is not the case. He doesn't believe that he is using magic judging by his movements. Hyunwoo is just running to the monster and hitting it. He looks for another target and do the same without even getting his hands out of his pocket. In other words, Hyunwoo is moving so fast that it seems like the monsters' heads are exploding. The time is up. The exam has ended. Hyunwoo has eliminated a total of 248 monsters since the event was being broadcasted live. Social media exploded and Kang Hyunwoo gets frustrated, so he breaks his phone and full of anger he starts to hit the wall, saying that he trained so hard, even when the others were being lazy, and also used dirty tricks to get his rank up. He asked his god if what has happened seems balanced. Once the test ended, a girl called Alice shows Hyunwoo a list. He asked what was that, and it was a list of every guild that wanted him to join them. They start to talk until Hyunwoo asks if being there was a part of her job, but she says that she had personal motives. She wanted to meet face to face the most advanced player and show him her book. The book was about the Aries Guild, which had everything related to contracts, member obligations. Alice recommends him to read bonus section and says that once both parties sign, the member will receive 10,000 millions once. She asks how does it feel to have in hands a contract with that amount of money. Hyunwoo says if he can ask a question, and it is that when did their local currency lost so much value. She says that everything went chaotic with all the monsters, and they talk for about an hour about how everything was so expansive these days. Hyunwoo is worried about those 10,000 millions because he knew it wouldn't last for long. Alice says that he shouldn't be worried about those 10,000 millions because that amount was just for signing the contract. The guild is willing to pay double if you renew the contract at the end of the year. They start talking about what would happen if he signs, and he has heard that it is illegal to offer contracts to anyone who does not belong to the association. Alice says that there is no point in getting stressed out, that he can make a decision after signing the contract. But Hyunwoo says that he was never interested in signing with any guild since he is not into the guilds. Alice thinks that Hyunwoo is joking, but he says that he doesn't want to be tied to a guild or their activities. Now in his room he thinks about how the world is now ruled by supply and demand, and the guild wouldn't offer him 10,000 millions for nothing, and he is pretty sure that after accepting them, they would make him do heavy work, so he decides to live an easy and comfortable life, doing what he wants. Thinking about that conversation with Alice, he realizes that there are mercenary hunters which work alone, and if he had known that before, he would have stayed and sleep rather than losing his time in that exam, so he goes and read the list of guilds that wanted him, and he thinks that is annoying. 5 days later, after the final day of the new hunter's protection period, Hyunwoo is in a Japanese restaurant with the 3 guild leaders and ex-partners, and he realizes how much they have grown while he was the same. He starts remembering everything lived with his buddies back in the time, and he remembered that Hyunwoo took cover behind him as a coward until they reached the 50th floor. And also when Seoyeon saw the Banshee in the 14th floor and peed himself. Hyunwoo emphasizes how happy he was to see them, and thinking about the sushi that was awesome, and thinking about how could he survive for 12 years without having it. The guild leaders reminds him that when they were on the 70th floor he mentioned how much he missed eating sushi since their enemy was a big fish, and he remembers that he took Seokwan's knife to make sushi out of a triton tail. The leaders said that every time heard some rumors about him they rejoiced because they knew that he was still alive. Hyunwoo asked that what kind of rumors, and they said that he was now a celebrity and TV would not stop talking about the things he did on that tower. Hyunwoo, scared, asked if they talked about his role performances on TV and asked which one of them because there were so many to tell, and he asked to himself if they talked about that time he beat the tower naked or that one when he beat the tower role playing as if he was Gollum. But they say that the most notorious and sad was when he beat every boss dancing in a weird way, and that other time when he advanced 10 floor with just a single kick. Hyunwoo says that in fact he did that, and the leaders ask him about what he did in that tower. And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends. Well guys, if you like this video and you want a part 2, comment below with the word tower. Also subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, hit the like button, but most importantly, leave a comment. Until the next video.